Welcome to CT Politics TV. I am your host for the night, Jimmy J. Currently at the Capitol right now, it is 39 degrees under cloudy conditions. Today we are joined by my very special guest. His name is Frank Ricci. He is a fellow of labor. He is also a retired fireman. We're going to talk a little bit about today about standards and the importance of them. So let's go ahead and welcome Mr. Frank Ricci. Hi, Mr. Ricci. How are you doing today?
Jimmy J, honored to be on your show, and thank you for your service in the United States Marine Corps.
You heard about that, huh? Yeah, and we're definitely going to be talking about it because of the topic of discussion tonight, which is standards, right? The way we judge if somebody can do the job, can actually handle the job physically, right? And because, as you mentioned, I was in the Marines for 20 years. You were a firefighter for how long?
I retired from the New Haven Fire Department as the drill master and a battalion chief, along with being the union president after 22 years in New Haven.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. That's 22 years on the firefighters. So real quick, before we get into my questions, I'm going to tell you a quick story, and then you can tell me how weak I am. I was home on leave one day. So I was up in upstate New York, and all of a sudden, there comes black smoke coming out of my neighbor's house, like billowing. My uncle at the time, who was a firefighter, was on disability. He was out for disability. He was at the house. So he's like, Jimmy, we got to do something. So I run over to the house. He's like, I can't do anything. I'm on disability. I'm like, well, what do I need to do, man? He's like, kick in the door. My neighbors literally had a baby 2 days prior. So was she home or not? I have no idea. So I'm kicking in the door, and you, by all means, back me up on this. It is not as easy as you see it is on TV. Right? It took me like 3 times to finally kick it in, but I got it. And they had a 100-gallon fish tank with a light on top of it. The light on top of it caught fire and was just going. And that's where all the black smoke came from the plastic. So again, my uncle, not being a participant because he's on disability, he's like, you got to go get a hose. So he actually unplugged it for me. And when I was going out to get the hose, and I put it out, right? Thank God. There was nobody home. They were still at the hospital. But the black smoke, Frank, the smoke just destroyed me. For a week later, I was blowing my nose and black soot would be coming out. Like, I don't know how anybody can be a firefighter, let alone for 22 years. So God bless you, Mr. Ricci, truly.
Well, thank you. And I think we could kind of take your example and kind of expand it a little bit, because smoke isn't just smoke. It's a toxic chemical cocktail. You know, hydrogen chloride, hydrogen cyanide, carbon monoxide. It's blinding. It's not like you see on the TV show Chicago Fire or the movies like Backdraft. You can't see in a fire. You experience that. Now, picture yourself or your loved one being on the second floor of that house where the fire is significant, with blistering heat, where you're struggling to breathe, where the smoke is so blinding and the heat's driving you to the floor. And now you know that when you get on that phone and call 911, within about 4 minutes, the fire department's going to show up to your house with no bureaucracy, no paperwork. They're going to show up at your house. It's a great government service. They're going to show up at your house and do the work to get you out. But you shouldn't have to question in your mind, well, can they physically pull me out? Are they going to be able to use the tools to force that door, a door that's designed to keep criminals out? Are they going to be able to lift a 24-foot extension ladder on any fire truck in Connecticut? Weighs 75 pounds. So with their gear on it, they got to get that ladder that's designed for a single individual. It doesn't get lighter if you're a female. It doesn't get heavier if you're a male. It's just a piece of equipment. And I've worked with numerous women. I've trained numerous women. And if they can pass the CPAT and go through the training academy, they all have one thing in common. They can do the job. And they deserve the respect to do the job. So this is a public safety issue, but it's also a it has financial implications on the taxpayer's wallet to change the test. And hopefully we can get a little bit into those financial issues a little bit further down in this interview.
So before we get into the financial portion of it, what are the standards right now? Or, yeah, because the bill hasn't been signed into law yet. So what are the standards right now, if you remember?
Okay, so 27 years ago, the International Association of Firefighters and the International Association of Fire Chiefs got together, and one of the main components of the program was to actually increase diversity. And they wanted to develop an entry-level exam that mimicked the essential job functions of the fire department. And they went out of their way to test not only, individuals of different races, but also individuals of different gender. And there was probably 8 or 9, don't quote me on that, different fire departments from around the country that participated in the development and the validation of this test. So I think LA County, Fairfax, Virginia, New York City, Miami-Dade, Florida, just to name a few. So you had a very diverse swath across the country.
Yeah, the entire country was represented almost.
Yeah, we wanted to, the IFF and the IF and the International Association of Chiefs wanted to make sure that this was job relevant, professionally developed, validated, could withstand legal scrutiny, and really determine if not only if a firefighter could do the job. The other thing it does, Jimmy J, is it's such a good predictor that if you pass this test, male or female, and a lot of males fail this test too, but if you pass this test and you maintain your physical fitness, it's a guarantee that you're not going to fail out of the fire academy because of lack of physical fitness. And you got to remember, everything, kind of like the Marines, almost everything you do is a team effort, right? You're counting on the Marine next to you. Exactly. Same thing in the fire department and in a recruit program. So if one Marine or one firefighter's physical fitness isn't where it needs to be, they endanger the other recruits and jeopardize their job to go through the program.
When people talk to me and they ask me about women in the military, I'll give them my opinion, right? And I always say, no, women don't belong in the military. Not because they can't do the job, right? I know female Marines that are 10 times better Marine than I am, right? They're 100 times more in shape than I am. But to me, in the military, and I'm sure you can speak to this in the fire department, when the poop hits the fan, you can't be distracted, right? You have a job to do, you have your training to rely on, and you can't be distracted. Now, I'm not saying women are a distraction. What I'm saying is, from the time you're born as a male, you're taught to protect women, right? I mean, you don't hit women, you don't push them, you protect them. That's who we were taught as men to do. Well, in a combat situation, and yes, I have been there, you're actually not concentrating on the task at hand. You're concentrating on protecting that female that's with you. And Jimmy, that causes more problems than it doesn't.
With the fire service, I'll agree to disagree because I've worked with numerous women, and as long as the standards aren't reduced and they can do the job the same as a man, I know men and women that would make their wife and husband a widow and their kids orphan for the communities that they serve. So I have the highest respect for women that can do the job, but with a little bit of the I don't want to say attitude might be the wrong word, but what you're expressing with a little bit about what you're expressing, what we don't want to do is lower the standard, kind of think that we're lifting somebody up by holding them down, and then put the women that can do the job under this cloud of suspicion that if something happens to me, they're not going to be able to pull me out. And that's why lowering this standard, it just, from a public policy sense and a financial and economic sense for the taxpayers, makes absolutely no sense.
And I'm assuming this is why the New Haven 20 was formed.
The New Haven 20 is a reference to the United States Supreme Court case. I was fortunate to have my name on it, but it was a promotional exam for lieutenant and captain where the city of New Haven thought that the political price to pay was too high to follow the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. And in the end, the Supreme Court sided with us realizing that merit has to hold out over immutable characteristics. And that's the same thing we're kind of seeing here in a sense, is that we want people judged as individuals. We don't want to see the government put forth schemes, gimmicks. And if they change this test, the test is going to be viewed as a charade. And that's only going to hurt women that can do the job.
So, I mean, we've all seen firefighters. We see them on TV. We've seen them in our communities. That gear looks a little heavy, Frank. I know in the military, when we're running around, I got about 80 to 100 pounds of gear I got to run around with. What is it like for a firefighter?
Well, based off my experience, and I'm also going to mention a very conservative publication that you might be familiar with, the New York Times. Okay. So the New York Times, which isn't a very conservative publication, the New York Times did a...
You were picking up the sarcasm there.
Yeah. I just want to make sure somebody picked up on that. The New York Times did an article and they broke down the firefighters' gear, and the basic firefighter gear, regardless if you're a male or a woman, came out to 59 pounds. Okay. So 59 pounds, that's the gear that's not pulling hose around obstacles in a blinding, heated environment. We're talking about just simply getting off the truck, ready to go to work, is 59 pounds with your coat. Now, these coats, there's probably work the industry can do to make the gear fit better for certain body types, but the gear, regardless, even when it's properly fitted, is cumbersome and it's a little bit restricting to move around in. You have a air pack, a self-contained breathing apparatus that goes around your shoulders and your hips that restricts movement. And you got big boots, big pants, and big gloves on. And now that's just to get off the piece. Now you got to get other tools. So what the New York Times did was they looked at different firefighter positions based off equipment. And they came up with, 59 pounds to start, but a firefighter that's assigned to climb a ladder and go cut or chop a hole in a roof, their gear and equipment is totaling out over 106 pounds of gear that the firefighter is carrying. The bill before the Connecticut General Assembly right now, Bill 5501, seeks to provide an alternative or reduce the 50-pound weighted vest. So our gear is already 59 pounds to start with. The test is only 50 for the vest, a vest that equally distributes the weight. And here's the thing, Jimmy J. When cadets take this test, they're not in fire gear. They're not in a fire coat. Yes, they're in a weighted vest, but they're in gym clothes. They're wearing sneakers. They're in an optimal environment, but the test, because it mimics those essential job functions, ensures that if you can pass CPAT, you're going to be able to meet the physical function to get out of the training academy.
Hey, real quick, I know in the military, I had a physical fitness test twice a year. Every year to me, that was our standard. Do you guys have standards like that where you have to periodically take physical fitness exam, or is it a one-time thing?
Every department is different. Now, the CPAT test is a licensed test, and it's designed for recruit firefighters. Each department would be based off their collective bargaining agreement in Connecticut. Some departments like West Haven, they do annual physical fitness tests. Other departments do it through training and live burns to check physical fitness. And the real progressive departments have actual wellness programs, which is a joint relationship between management and labor. Like a lot of those progressive departments that put together this test, they have nutritionists on staff. They have ongoing training, physical training every day. So there is work that can be done, but changing the standard for the entry-level exam not only puts people at risk, but it also impacts the taxpayers in the amount of money that they have to pay.
How exactly do you correlate to the standards and money and finances like that?
Okay, so in the state of Connecticut, the only entity that runs the CPAT program that has the license is the state of Connecticut. Okay, so because it's a licensed program, Connecticut doesn't own it. So if this bill passed, it would be changing a component of the test, invalidating the CPAT test. So remember I told you this test's been around for 27 years?
Yes,
It's
sir.
withstand it withstood numerous legal challenges, including recently in Madison, Wisconsin, where again it was challenged for adverse impact. And the court once again codified that the test meets, even though it has adverse impact, it meets business necessity, it's professionally developed, and it is an indicator of job performance. So this test keeps passing legal scrutiny, and also the EEOC, which looks at things from a very liberal lens, which to make sure that there's no discrimination, actually entered into an agreement with the IFF and the International Association of Fire Chiefs, backing the test as long as there was proper mentoring, coaching, and practice to take the test. So if this bill passed, it would invalidate one component. So now scrap the CPAT test. So any community that is a requirement by the collective bargaining agreement to send new recruits to CPAT, now there's no test for them to have. So now you're going to have to pay to professionally develop a test that we know in this day and age, and just based off CPAT, is going to face immense legal scrutiny and legal challenges. So what are we accomplishing here? And then we're going to have a different standard for the males than the females. The fire doesn't discriminate. The equipment doesn't discriminate. Right. So this is going to possibly delay hiring of recruits in fire departments across the state. It's also going to pique the ears of any attorney out there that, wait a second here, we're lowering their standards. We're not treating similar situated people correctly. And it just, this is the definition of insanity to do something for the state of Connecticut.
Absolutely, Frank. And I talk to people about this, about standards, because they always, they know I was in the Marines and we have some of the hardest standards around. And they're like, well, why don't you just lower them? I'm like, because then we wouldn't be Marines. We would be Army or something else other than Marines, right? So our standards are very important to us. Number one, it's a sense of pride for us, right? But it means that we can be Marines. Like, we're Marines when we can pass this test. We're good to go. We're physically fit. We're strong. We can go to war. Like, I don't understand how anybody would feel to be like that pride if it was just given to me. If I could just, there was no kind of standard, right? So it very much this very much upsets me. But I always like to give the example of a heart surgeon, right? All right, you're going in for heart surgery. We lowered the standards for you to get the surgeon to get a diploma. So he got all D's, but he's good to go. He can do it. Where this guy over here excelled, who would you pick? I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? It's an absolute no-brainer. Who would you pick? The guy who was just given a piece of paper, or a guy that actually had to do the work and earn it, right? And who kept and maintained those high standards of education to become a heart surgeon, right? I mean, I think this is one of the more extreme cases that people will see, but people don't realize how extreme police standards or and I don't want to say they're extreme, but the importance is extreme for police standards, for firemen standards, for military standards. It is vitally important to make sure and ensure that they can actually do the job. Now, you mentioned earlier that the ladder off the truck was what, 65 pounds?
A 24-foot extension ladder that's on every fire engine, it weighs 75 pounds itself.
75 pounds. So on top of that and the gear, now we're looking at, what is that, 129 pounds total just to pick up a ladder, right?
Never mind doing any work or carrying somebody out of a window that's unconscious that's passed to you, or dragging somebody out that's unconscious, or rescuing a firefighter. My last fire in New Haven, I was trapped in a basement and firefighters came and pulled me out of the stairs. I had confidence whether they were male or female that they were going to be able to pull me out. This is a dangerous job, and to try to socially engineer it and basically have diversity trump merit makes absolutely no sense. Achievement is not determined nor limited by your sex, your creed, your race, or religious beliefs. It's determined by your hard work, your ethic, your physical fitness, and your training. Where the public policy could come into play instead of this just ridiculousness, is that we could do a better job in Connecticut for coaching, mentoring. One of the issues in Connecticut is that, and this is ironic, so we put all this money into state money, your tax dollars, into the state fire schools, but yet there's really no matrix or budget justification on how that money is allocated. What's happened in Connecticut is that as each fire school came in line, they were given a budget amount. And then from there, that's how they justified their budget. So if the increase went up a little this year, it got a 3% increase or a decrease, it just fluctuated, but there was no matrix, no planning that really went into those initial budgets. When they built these fire schools, New Haven is a perfect example. The state of Connecticut, the taxpayers paid for an auxiliary building across the street from the main academy. One of the intended purposes of that was to have a CPAT facility so you could have mentoring, training, and coaching, but they decided to build it 5 feet too short. To get the license, the area has to be a certain amount. So Connecticut is one of the only states that I'm aware of. There may be few, but we live in New England. Connecticut can't provide CPAT year round and coaching and mentoring year round and every day because they have to deal with New England heat and New England cold, because the test is so well regulated. If the humidity is too high, they don't give the test. Your test gets canceled. If it's too cold, they don't, I believe if it's too cold, they don't give the test either. So by Connecticut failing to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, they built a building, 5 or 6 feet too short to make sure it met the needs. And we really need to take a good look at the way we administer state dollars, taxpayer dollars. This state's very unaffordable, and Yankee Institute does a great job being a watchdog, being a voice for the taxpayers up in Hartford. But we need the state fire administration to take a real good look of how are these training dollars distributed? Is it based off a matrix, or are they building off budgets of their initial amounts that they got? And why don't we have an indoor facility that's capable of doing this year round so we can provide mentoring and coaching? And that may help achieve to minimize that adverse impact. But instead we have politicians playing politics with public safety, putting diversity over merit, and actually holding back and hurting the very people they're purporting to help. It's a public safety issue, Jimmy J. And I can't believe that this many sponsors came onto the bill when it defies common sense, and when nobody did the research to say, wait a second, we got a license. We can't just change a component. We invalidate the whole entire test, and we got to start from scratch.
My God, so I've been talking to you for 23 minutes now, Frank, and you have yet to use the word equity. Is there a reason for it? Because in my opinion, it doesn't exist, right? Equity doesn't exist except in your house. And do you feel that this is what they're trying to achieve by lowering these standards? Like what kind of equity is there when the fire doesn't care? Death doesn't care what race you are, what gender you are.
There should be equal opportunity for everyone. And that's why that coaching and mentoring component is so critical. But that doesn't equate to equal outcomes. Equity, unfortunately, has become the new code word for past failed ideas of quotas, gimmicks, schemes designed to engineer a result without regard for merit or the individual. To be clear, firefighters don't raise to your expectations of them being able to put up that ladder, force the door, cut a hole in the roof, or drag you out of the building. They fall to their level of training and their functional physical fitness. We do not want a test in Connecticut that is a feel-good charade that will put all women under a cloud of suspicion and actually hurt recruiting goals instead of trying to help them. Again, we can do coaching, we can do mentoring, we can get out in the communities. But even if you look at the latest news articles in the Washington Free Beacon, NBC Connecticut News, News 12, they all been interviewing female firefighters who can do the job, who all passed the CPAT, and they don't even want this to change. Again, there's a common sense solution to this, and costing the taxpayers more money We don't need the state of Connecticut picking our pockets anymore. Inflation is high. It's tough to live in this state. Jimmy J, we want to make Connecticut affordable so everybody can succeed in this great state. And we need to support business.
100%. We talk about it all the time. Oh, by the way, I'm on the Mornings with Gary Byron show. I'm the producer on WDRC. And we talk about this a lot on the radio, how outcomes are never going to be equal, right? We're never going to have equal outcomes, and we need to start actually talking honestly about this, right? I think that's the best way I can put it. To be honest, and let's not try to kid ourselves here. Not every woman is going to be able to lift me up who is 190 pounds. And we got to remember something here, Frank, because I've done it, right? There's a huge difference between carrying and picking somebody, let's just say picking somebody up that's conscious and picking up somebody that's unconscious. That dead weight, for some reason, adds another 50 pounds, it seems like. I don't know. Have you experienced that as well?
Well, I'm going to try to pull something up real quick here, and because I got it listed on what the stations are, because it's very relevant to your point. And
great.
I'll pull it off of my computer because I can list you what the stations are. So the stations that the firefighters have to go through is a dummy drag. So you're dragging dead unconscious weight in a sense, a stair climb, a hose drag, an equipment carry, a ladder raise and extension, forcible entry, search, rescue, and a ceiling breach and pull. And the departments that we were talking about earlier that put this together were Austin, Texas, Calgary, Charlotte, North Carolina, Fairfax, Virginia, Indianapolis, Los Angeles County, Miami-Dade, New York, Phoenix, and Seattle. So this really is a well thought out test. 27 years in the making, survives legal challenges after legal challenges. Even the EEOC backs the test with coaching, mentoring, and that's the direction Connecticut needs to go. And we need to do a better job of watching our tax dollars for these local academies, which I'm fully supportive of, but they got to be able to justify their budgets, and it can't be based off a fake matrix of just when they got the money, this is how much, and this is how we're going to justify it. Well, let's take a look at how these academies spend their money, and is it politics or public safety that's determining what academy gets what?
Frank, I got to ask you real quick. We're running out of time, but you kept mentioning this mentoring program, how we need to bring that back. We need to have an indoor facility. And then you mentioned all the tax dollars that are going to go out the window if this bill got passed. But how much is it going to cost the state of Connecticut to build a new building, so you have indoor testing, and then staff that with mentors, coaches, strength coaches, I'm assuming? I think that's going to be quite a bit.
Well, those are all things that have to be looked at in the eyes through the lens of the budget. Do you have to build a building, or is there a building that you can get that you can retrofit to it? Can you expand an existing building? Again, we're putting tax dollars to train career and volunteer firefighters. We have a public interest to ensure that firefighters can do the job. So there's got to be creative ways to be responsible with the taxpayers' dollars. And if the politicians want to put money into this, it's better to put money into that than to put money into scrapping a test, paying to professionally develop a test, and then facing legal challenge after legal challenge, because the CPAT test has faced legal challenge after legal challenge. So we want the politicians to be good stewards of our tax dollars, regardless of party, and do the right thing.
Absolutely, Frank. You know what? This was a great conversation. You got a lot of information out there. I know our viewers are probably going to be up in arms about this. I mean, and they should be. The Marine Corps hasn't changed their standard in 247 years. You just said that this standard has been down for 27 years, right?
Yep.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Here's my last question to you, Frank. Have you invited any of these politicians to come down and see the CPAP and have them carry that dummy, right? Which I'm assuming has got to weigh over 100 pounds, right? to do the stairs, to pull the equipment. I mean, did you actually invite the people that are trying to put this ridiculous bill in place to actually come down and see for themselves? I really think they should.
Well, Jimmy J, that's a great idea. And here's the thing. It's a state facility. It's not even owned by the towns or municipalities. The CPAP facility is a state facility. So any representative, before they put their name on this, could say, hey, I want to go down to the Connecticut State Fire Academy and either go through it or watch somebody go through it and see what's involved. And again, the test isn't a secret. The test actually, in the manual for the test, when you apply for a fire department, they give you a manual on how to prepare for it without any firefighting gear. So you can also do it in your gym without the formal practicing. So it's not like it's a gotcha type of thing of, oh, you got to take this. No, they actually say, do this exercise. This will help strengthen your core. You should be able to run this much. We got to measure not only strength, but endurance. So this test is set up so that everybody can succeed if they have the physical ability to do that. If they're a little bit below, they have the means to bring that person up. But we can't lower the standards because it's going to lower it for everybody. And it's dangerous.
Dangerous. Absolutely. That's probably the best word I can use to describe it would be dangerous. And I just hope everybody thinks about this when, they're progressive or they're right or, whatever political party they're at. I just hope people think about this in a very common sense manner.
Well, Jimmy J, what do you call it? Public safety should transcend politics. This is a nonpartisan, bipartisan issue. Let's just do the right thing and not cost the taxpayers more money and endanger the taxpayers' lives. It's very simple.
You know what? Very simple. I think we can end it on that note, Frank. I truly, truly appreciate you coming on and talking to us about this lunacy. I think we can call this bill. So again, Frank, thank you very much. I'm going to give you 10, 15 more seconds if you want to say anything to the people and our listeners.
I'd just like to let your listeners know about the Yankee Institute. It's a nonpartisan, a think tank that is out there being your voice up in Hartford and watching out for all of these types of bills. We want the politicians to be responsible and with our tax dollars, and they can go to yankeeinstitute.org. And I just want to thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you, Frank. I really appreciate you coming on and giving all this information and giving us a perspective from somebody who's actually been there, right? So I'm assuming that I'll just say this and then I'll let you go, but I'm assuming the people that wrote this bill has never actually been a fireman or a fireperson. So
firefighter. Of course,
no clue.
Of course,
Mr. Frank Ricci, who has been a fireman, who is now with the Yankee Institute, a fellow of labor. Thank you very much again. Make sure everybody you go out to yankee.org. I believe that is what you said, yankee.org?
Yankeeinstitute.org, sir.
Yankeeinstitute.org, and check out all the latest things that's going on with the Yankee Institute. Frank, thank you very much for stopping by. I truly appreciate it. When this bill goes into the future here a little more, I'm going to get you back on so we can talk about it again because it was really fun.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Mr. Ricci. Okay, guys, I am Jimmy J. I hope you guys have a great night. Thank you for watching CT Politics TV. Thank you to our guest, Frank Ricci, for all the latest interviews and analysis of the CT leaders, politicians, all the big wigs. Visit ctpolitics.tv and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, all our social medias at CT Politics TV. Stay tuned for more CT Politics TV.